You know that feeling, right? Where you're just constantly fighting to stay motivated, pushing yourself with sheer willpower, and you just end up totally exhausted? Well, what if I told you there's a completely different way? A method that doesn't involve pushing at all, but instead kind of effortlessly pulls you towards your goals. Okay, let's dive into this. So the whole idea in the material we're exploring today is that, well, most of us are using the wrong system for motivation. We're taught to rely on this push system, driven by force and willpower, but there's a much, much more effective pull system just waiting for us. And this slide really illustrates the core concept perfectly. Okay, so think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to cross an ocean. You could grab a canoe and just paddle like crazy against the tide. That's what we're calling the paddle approach. It's pure willpower, and man, is it exhausting. Or you could use a sailboat. You do that initial work of raising the sail, and then the wind, this powerful outside force, just carries you. That's the sail approach, and that's exactly what this source calls clear focus. All right, so what is this clear focus thing, anyway? Well, it's basically a pull system that's all based on intentionality. It's about creating these powerful mental connections so you can succeed without having to force it. It's really not about trying harder. It's about seeing clearer. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little abstract, right? But the source argues there's a very real, very powerful mechanism at play here. I mean, think about it. Your brain is processing millions of bits of information every single second. You have to be selective about what you pay attention to. And that selection process, your focus, it literally shapes the world you experience. And look, this isn't just some nice theory. There's actually some really compelling research to back it up. So in a famous study of self-made millionaires by Dr. Thomas Stanley, you might know him, he wrote The Millionaire Next Door, a staggering 91%, 91, credited their ability to focus on key issues as a top reason for their success. It wasn't about willpower or just hustling harder than everyone else. It was about the simple clarity of their focus. So the really crucial point here is how this actually works. The theory is that when you establish a clear focus, you're basically presetting your brain. It's like you're creating a new mental set point. And what this does is it primes you to automatically notice opportunities that are perfectly aligned with your goals. Opportunities that, get this, were always there, but that you were completely blind to before. Okay, so that's all great. But what should we actually be focusing on? This is where the whole idea gets really, really interesting, because it argues that just having a focus, well, that's not enough. The quality, and more importantly, the source of that focus is what makes all the difference in the world. And this brings us to this really key idea of a pure motive. So what is it? It's a focus on who you are becoming, not just on what you're doing or what you want to have. It's all about doing things for the right reasons, and that, ultimately, is what fuels the most powerful form of motivation there is. Okay, so how does this pure motive actually translate into action? Well, the material lays out a super clear 4-step path. And notice it doesn't start with actions. Nope. It starts with step 1, a clear focus that's rooted in your morals and ethics. From there, that focus informs your beliefs. Your beliefs then shape your attitudes. And only then, at the very end, does it lead to effective action. You see? Everything just flows from that initial pure motive. Now, this is fascinating because it completely flips our typical way of thinking on its head. Most of us, right, we operate on a have, do, be model. It's like when I have the money, I'll do the things I want and then I'll be happy. But the source argues for the complete reverse, a be, do, have model. You start with who you need to become. You let that guide what you do, and then the things you want to have, well, they just follow as a natural result. All right, now we're getting to the absolute core of the source's argument for what actually fuels a pure motive. It presents research from, get this, over 1,000 medical journal articles that suggest a really strong link between spirituality or religious commitment and positive life outcomes. So just to be clear, we're going to explore these claims neutrally, exactly as they're presented in the material. And this brings us to what feels like a huge paradox, right? I mean, a common fear is that having faith means you have to give up control of your own life, hand over your personal agency to something else. But the material challenges this idea head on, and it asks this really provocative question. What if surrendering control actually gave you more control? And the research that's presented on this is, well, it's pretty surprising. It's totally counterintuitive. At least 5 different studies cited in the material all came to the same conclusion. Religious belief tends to increase a person's internal locus of control. That's your sense of personal power. And the theory is that by aligning with a higher power, people actually feel more empowered and more capable of making an impact on the world, not less. So it's also really important to distinguish between the different types of motivation here. On one hand, you've got extrinsic motivation. That's like using religion for outside benefits, maybe social status or something. But then you have intrinsic motivation. That's the pure motive we've been talking about, and that's valuing spirituality for its own sake. And the data cited on this is just stark. People who were intrinsically motivated were found to be 55% less likely to be diagnosed with major depression. They also reported way lower anxiety. Okay, this next one is one of the most fascinating theories presented in the whole thing. It's called the dorsal gate theory. So the claim is that spiritual practices like prayer or meditation might physically impact your nervous system. How? By shutting a gate, so to speak, in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. That's the spot where pain signals enter the brain. The implication here is huge. This could reduce not just physical pain, but also the emotional pain of things like rejection, failure, and even that lack of motivation. Okay, so let's put the pieces together. We've got this concept of clear focus, and we know it needs to be powered by a pure motive. But what's the spark? What ignites this whole process? Well, the source argues it all comes down to one single, incredibly powerful act. And a cornerstone of this whole idea is captured perfectly in a quote from the Scottish mountaineer W.H. Murray. It basically says that until we make a definite, real commitment, we're holding ourselves back. But the moment we truly commit, that's when a whole stream of unforeseen events, meetings, and assistance just starts to flow in our favor. It's like the universe starts working with you. And the crucial point here is that this is not just about willpower. The material makes a really clear distinction, calling this deeper level a soul commitment. Think of it as a passionate, absolutely certain decision that you make from your very core. And that is the pivot point. That's where just wishing for something transforms into actually willing it into existence. And just to really underscore this whole point about the search for meaning, the source brings in this powerful quote from the legendary psychologist Carl Jung. He observed that among all his patients in the second half of their lives, their core problem, when you boiled it all down, was a search for meaning, a search that he himself frames in terms of finding a religious outlook on life. And all of that brings us to the final question this explainer leaves us with. And it's really a question for you to take with you and reflect on. Is your life, your motivation, driven by what you want to have? Is it driven by what you want to do? Or is it rooted in who you want to become? Because according to this material, the answer to that question holds the real key to unlocking truly effortless motivation.